The Brisbane property market. Are we becoming the next Perth where everyone's going to get priced out? Well, we're going to take you through the top 5 house demand suburbs in Brisbane that are available today and the top 5 crime suburbs. You're going to be pretty surprised. They're not what I was expecting.
That's a surprise.
All right, so Brisbane property market update for 2024. Melinda, let's start from the top. Obviously, you've got some exciting stats to take us through. Let's just get into it. Growth suburbs, like obviously you're seeing a lot on the ground, day to day. Where's the next opportunity?
It's a good question. Depends on what you're looking for, but we have collated the top 10 growth suburbs for Brisbane. I'm going to share with you the top 5 right now. This is the Brisbane City Council region, and it's based on the last 10 years of performance. So if you're happy for me to run through, I'll just run through.
Yeah, let's do it.
Number 1 is Grange with a 139.9% growth in the last 10 years, followed by Camp Hill in second place, 136.8% growth in 10 years. Kalinga, really small suburb on the north side of Brisbane, 132.5% growth. Wishart on the south side, 126.2%. And coming in 5th place, New Farm, 125.3%. So all what I would consider almost blue chip locations.
And so out of these suburbs, I guess diving into them in a bit more detail, if you're sort of home buyer, like Camp Hill, obviously you can get priced out. New Farm's pretty expensive. What are you sort of seeing with your home buyers or, people that you're helping around Brisbane try and find a home as opposed to investment as an opportunity? What is the draw card for some of these suburbs and what drives the growth in some of these areas?
Look, these areas are primarily owner-occupier dominated areas. They're areas where people have strong incomes. So there's increasing capacity for people to pay as stock shortages continue. So there's not a lot of properties available for sale. In these areas, people generally will fight over the limited stock, meaning they will pay more. This is what causes prices to escalate in these locations. So there's a scarcity of supply, but there's strong demand, and that demand is supported by strong incomes.
And it might be putting you on the spot a bit, but with these sort of suburbs and these areas moving forward, what are some data points you might look for? So in those areas, like I guess in Brisbane the last few years, there's been a bit of a push, especially in the growth suburbs, towards more of an owner-occupied mix. So it's homes to live in, potentially it's schools, it's catchments. Like what are some of the data points and some of the things that you look at when you're trying to discover these areas moving forward?
Absolutely. So we look at every suburb across all of Greater Brisbane to understand what makes a suburb a high growth location versus what suburb might be experiencing a lower rate of growth over a long period of time. And some of the things that consistently coming through are areas where there's a dominance of owner-occupiers, because owner-occupiers do buy with their heart, they don't buy with a calculator. So generally, they will be prepared to pay more in an environment where there's not a lot of choice or not a lot of stock. The second thing, incomes. Yes, if you've got more income, you're going to be able to pay more either to buy that property, but also to rent a property if you're a tenant in that area. So there's a lot of areas in Brisbane where there's a dominance of landlords. Some areas have 70% of the suburb are landlords and only 30% owner-occupiers. We see less upward pressure on prices in those locations because the dominant buyer group are investors, and investors buy with a calculator, not with their heart. So one of the things I'd be looking for, if you're looking for some price pressure, is buy where the owner-occupiers want to live, because long-term, providing that demographic spread does not change, you are selling to an emotional buyer.
That's interesting. And the other thing that's I always find interesting about Brisbane is some of the school catchment areas.
There's been reports in the past by Domain which have indicated there's up to 10% price differentiation even within the same suburb based on school catchment zone. So remember, school catchment borders do not align with suburb borders or boundaries. So if you're looking for a specific school catchment, it's so important that you understand the boundary line, because properties right next door to each other could be in different school catchments or across the road from each other. So have a look on the Education Queensland website, Google School Catchment Zones Queensland, and plug in the address to understand what school catchment the property sits within.
Yeah, and definitely check out your blog as well on Streamline Property Buyers. I know you guys do a monthly update, which has a lot of this data and even more beautiful charts and colorful details, which is going to be good. And I'll include a link below to that. But I guess moving on to the next topic that you had, which is, I guess, is looking at the opposite end of the spectrum. When you start trying to do your research, looking at properties, it's the top 5 crime suburbs in Brisbane and how this potentially impacts prices. So yeah, walk me through this.
So this is where we're always looking at, are these areas safe to live? And what's interesting is that the areas where crime has been identified as being the highest, quite often areas where there's higher density development. So a lot of high density units. So the highest crime area in Brisbane is actually Chermside. People have a preconceived idea that, it can be other suburbs, but Chermside's in number 1 as the top crime area right now. Upper Mount Gravatt is number 2. So you'll know both of these have large shopping precincts, high density units. In third place, we've got Woolloongabba. Okay, again, a high density region where we've got a lot of high rise units. In fourth place, Inala. Okay, so that's actually in the southwestern region of Brisbane. And finally, West End. Again, West End is another high density region. So these are areas, but for Inala, the other areas are all areas where you've got a population concentration. So because there's more people in a smaller area, the volume of crimes in that specific location tends to be higher. If we were looking at crime per capita, these numbers would be different.
Yeah, and do you find that the crime stats, do they have an impact to the price, or is it more on livability and just things to be aware, I guess, if you're buying an estate?
It's not necessarily something that impacts price, but it's something that you need to be aware of. For example, if you're a single female looking to buy your first home, you just need to be aware of the neighbourhood that you're buying into. There are going to be some locations where crime will impact on desirability. So that's something that you need to be aware of as a buyer. But as I said, in areas where there's high density, it is expected that there's going to be higher crime rates simply because there's a higher concentration of people in a smaller space.
And I know, you obviously help a lot of people buy homes. There's the numbers, there's the nuts and bolts. There's also that personal aspect. And I know when I was looking at a home a couple of years ago, I did the inspection during the week. All looked pretty good. There was a school across the road, but I didn't really think about it. So the inspection was on the weekend. Then I went back during the week and noticed the school traffic was horrendous. Are there any tips like that? Obviously this crime, that's a good thought, because it's if you're coming home from the bus late at night, you want to be aware of this stuff. Are there any other inspection or things you do on a property that aren't in the numbers that you help get some reassurance on the home that you're looking at?
Absolutely. Inspect the property at different times of the day for reasons like you've just pointed out, because there can be different impacts at different times of the day. My advice also is to understand the orientation and understand where the sun moves in Brisbane at different times of the year. A lot of people will sell west-facing homes in winter because it's beautiful and warm. However, west-facing homes in summer can be hot and, a little bit overwhelming. So there are online resources that buyers can use to help them understand the direction of the sun, where the sun sets in winter and summer. So you can also look those up if you're looking for a cheat sheet or a cheat way to actually avoid waiting 6 months to see which direction the sun sets in Brisbane.
That's amazing. And so on our third topic that you prepared for us, the top 5 3-bedroom house demand suburbs in Brisbane. Are these similar to the first? I'm just interested to go through it.
This is really interesting because this gives buyers an indication of where it's going to be hardest to buy a 3-bedroom house right now based on the volume of buyers that are looking at this product online. So this information, when we're looking at demand indicators, this is the number of people that are viewing an online listing for a 3-bedroom house in this suburb. So in number 1 place, the most in-demand suburb in Brisbane for a 3-bedroom house is Windsor. In second place, it's Holland Park. Third place is The Gap. In fourth place, it's Paddington. And in fifth place, it's Everton Park. So they are the top 5 most in-demand suburbs for 3-bedroom houses.
How do you get this data? So if you're currently in the researching phase, do you have your own methods of doing this? Are they on your website? How do you kind of collate these views?
So some of the data that we access is through paid subscription providers, and we're very fortunate to have a couple of virtual assistants that work with us to literally collate spreadsheets, because my background is research and I love data, and I feel like data helps our clients pinpoint locations. But I will say data is good, but local knowledge is better. So if you are a first home buyer or someone looking to get into the market, going to the neighbourhood, walking around that neighbourhood, that's going to help you understand what's happening out there. I will say realestate.com.au and domain.com.au have some very useful resources which will help you understand some suburb level statistics. So you can do a suburb search on either of those platforms, which will help you understand the median value. Some of them have some demand indicators in terms of who's looking at what products, and you can also get some demographic information from those free resources about who lives in that location, and that can often be enough to guide you or give you a snapshot view of that particular location.
Awesome. And obviously your website as well, which has the monthly digest on sort of, if you're looking at a high level and trying to work out and narrow down specific suburbs in Brisbane, it's a great way to start.
Yeah, we publish a monthly blog on what's actually happening in the Brisbane property market. And in that blog, we also track the changes between the house market and the unit market. Top level, most of the news reports that you will hear will talk about dwelling values. But what we're finding in Brisbane right now is that the house market is moving in a slightly different way to the unit market. And in fact, the unit segment of the market, which does incorporate both units and townhouses, it's actually outperformed the house market here in Brisbane over the last 2 years, 12 months, over the last quarter, and also over the last month in terms of capital growth. So that segment of the market is definitely a lot tougher if you're a buyer looking to secure a home and you're a unit or townhouse chaser. You're going to find a lot more competition in that part of the market right now.
What are you finding would differentiate offers in the current market? So if you are in that segment and trying to get in and getting priced out or missing out, like what are some practical tips you can do to get through?
Great question. Terms matter as well as price. So not all sellers are looking for the best price, but what sellers don't want is uncertainty. So if you're a first home buyer and you haven't already spoken to a mortgage broker to arrange your finance, and therefore you need 21 days finance timeframes, that's not going to cut it in today's market. You really need to be aligning with a mortgage broker who's going to be in a position to turn around a final approval in as little as 7 days if possible. So terms do matter. Also ensuring that you've got a building and pest inspector available to complete that report very quickly. It's going to reduce the time frame that you need for a building and pest report. The other thing is be as clean as possible and do a lot of due diligence work up front. Conveyancers might suggest a due diligence clause that's going to be very unfavorable to a seller. So you really need to do a lot of work up front, be clean with your offer, and have short terms that are still going to protect you, but are going to enable your offer to be competitive outside of price alone.
Now, I know we've had a couple of buyers. We had a couple about a month ago that we said, okay, like you can go 7 days finance, 30 days settlement. That's fine. Mm-hmm. They interpret that as 7 days finance, 14 days settlement. And we've got this contract on our desk and like, oh, it's a bit skinny. Like, do you realize it's a bit tight? But anyway, the terms won them and we got it settled in 14 days, which was incredible. Amazing. But yeah, we're definitely seeing that a lot at the moment where the terms are getting more and more important. And I guess for a bit of intro with your business, like for our buyers that are getting frustrated in the market, I've had some people that are onto their fourth pre-approval and have just missed out. Maybe tell us a bit more about Streamline Property Buyers and how you help people get to the market.
Sure. So we are a boutique buyers agency service operating out of Wilston. We help home buyers and property investors to purchase properties in and around the Brisbane City Council region and select locations within Moreton Bay. We exist for people who are time poor, for people that don't understand the process, but also for people that need a guiding hand in a professional capacity to enable them to put forward competitive offers up front and not miss out. Because our market is shifting at a rate of 2.5% over the last quarter in the housing market and 5% over the last quarter in the unit and townhouse market, there is an opportunity cost of sitting on the sidelines or continually missing out. So for example, your home buyers that are onto their third or fourth pre-approval, unfortunately, because of the market shift in value, they're being priced out of what they could afford 3 months ago. So at a median value level right now in Brisbane, the market is shifting about $10,000 per month. So that's actually quite significant. In the housing market, we're shifting 0.8% per month. So you calculate that on the budget. And in the unit market, it's 1.6% per month. So it's a significant shift when you calculate that on the budget that you're working with. So my advice is if you have to stretch to secure the property, that stretch can be quantified based on the market shift. And that's where professional advice can help you to come to an informed decision where you're not going to pay an unrealistic price.
Yeah, no, so with this couple, they started at a price point of $600,000 out sort of towards Burpengary almost 2 years ago. And now it's much over that. It's over the $700,000 cap for some of the grants. So it's definitely a service. We'll include all the links below. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, see you later.